Okay, so I just wanted to quickly update everybody. I in- added a Selenium grid so that we could run UI functional tests on the pet clinic site. And the reason I did that was because it's a good demonstration of how sometimes you don't necessarily want to run your tests or your functional tests anyway on the same box as Jenkins. And this is a good use case, I think, because you can see here when I tried running a functional test, it came back and said that the OS was Linux, and then it threw an error because it couldn't actually find the driver. That's because Chrome is not installed and there's no driver executable on the CentOS box that you guys provided me from Vagrant. Um, so one workaround, there's probably lots of ways to solve. Actually, I know there's lots of ways to solve this, but one way that I would prefer to do it would be to set up a Selenium grid, and I have something here to demonstrate that so that we could see how that would work. I've set this up to work on AWS, but here in this particular demo, I'm just running it locally. I have the grid set up on my local host. Um, and so this is actually the hub here. And this is the one that's actually waiting for a test to come through. And here's the node. So if you're familiar with Selenium Grid, then this will probably seem a little boring, so I apologize. But just real quick, the hub is constantly listening and waiting for a test request to come through. When it comes through, it looks for a matching node that fits those requirements. So, for example, like we can actually look here in my platform. The requirements, capabilities that I'm setting are Mac, and we're using the Chrome options, and that's pretty much it. So as long as it can find a node with those matching capabilities, then it will execute the test. And real quick, we can go up here and we can take a look at, so this is actually the address that it's going to pass the test to. And we'll stick that in a variable. And we're telling it that our desired capabilities are for Chrome, that the platform is going to be on Mac, no particular version. And then I have a naming capability here set, but that won't be used in this demo. That's more for Sauce Labs. And then on to the test. So it creates the WebDriver, and it knows it's going to be using the grid. So we'll take a look back here. Browser type equals grid, so it knows it's using these options. Assuming all those capabilities are set and accepted, then it will create a new WebDriver based on the grid node 2, which I showed you guys earlier up here, which is this address, which leads back to this local host, which is represented here by this terminal window. The hub is configured to clean up sessions as tests are done and they time out from inactivity. Much like a database connection, we have a limited number of connections in the pool. So if you don't have that timeout cleanup session set up properly, you'll eventually use up all of your sessions and then your tests will start failing. Okay, so if we go back to our Jenkins, actually, I think a better way to demonstrate this would be to actually just make a commit. Let me do that real quick. So that way you can see the whole thing and working as expected. So just real quick, that will give us a change. And go ahead and push this up, which will get detected by our SCM polling. And this will take a few minutes. So let's see if we can move these a little bit. Yep, sorry. So it's getting ready to kick off the job. It detected the change. So over here, yep, we'll see it actually start building. And when it gets to, so in here, in this part, it's actually going to run our Gatlin tests. And then once it gets to functional tests is where it will actually look at the Jenkins file and see where we've given it a Maven test command specifically for this class, Kaiju test class example, which contains all of our test code. And it's a simple test where it's just going to the pet clinic on my local host. It's confirming that the find owners link exists. We're going to click it, and then we're going to click add owner, and then we're going to attempt to add an owner without actually filling in any of the form, which should give us a may not be empty validation string, which then we assert exists in the body. So very simple test, but I think a good example of, I think it's a good simple test to demonstrate the grid. And when it finally does get to the functional test dev phase or stage, you will actually see the Selenium grid pick up the request here in the terminal. It will then check the capabilities that's being requested. It will match it to the corresponding node, and then it will fire the test, which will actually open up a Chrome browser and navigate to the pet clinic and actually execute the test that we just went over in IntelliJ. This is going to take several more minutes, at least 2 minutes. But for authenticity's sake, I don't want to cut or edit the video. And obviously, I know we'll be doing a demo, but I just wanted to demonstrate this ahead of time. It was something that I wanted to get included in the pipeline outside of what the exercise required for you guys. All right, so we're going through our performance, load, and security test stage. The only test that's actually being executed here is the Gatlin performance test. And after this executes, we can actually go in the console and take a look at the results. And we'll actually be able to see some of what the test is doing inside of the node window here in this terminal window. But I think the results are a lot cleaner and easier to read inside of Jenkins console. And normally, I would think that we would set up a Slack webhook or maybe a Slack plugin and be pushing these results to a Slack channel instead of having our developers dig through the Jenkins console. All right, so we should be executing our functional test here in just a moment. All right, so it should be bringing down all of its dependencies based on the POM file. And we should see the terminal windows here receive the call to the Selenium server. Yep, there they are, it's firing now. There's our test. Validation as expected. And the rest of our Jenkins file stages fire off. And we passed. So if we take a look at the results here. So here's our Gatlin test. And then we move into our functional test phase, bringing down all of our dependencies. And then the actual test is fired. So running kaiju test class example, and then the framework, because I tied in my kaiju test framework into the pet clinic project, and we can go over that during the demo. But so we see here that a new kaiju instance is unleashed. Then we navigate to our target web app that we're testing, which in this case is Pet Clinic running on a local host. We're waiting for a max of 30 seconds for the find owners to become visible, so that's the link that it's looking for. Once it finds it, it clicks on the partial link text for find owners, waiting a max of 30 seconds for the add owner to become visible. So once again, we're just checking to make sure it exists prior to trying to interact with it. We then click on add owner. We use a CSS selector to find the actual button to submit the form to add the owner, but without filling out any of the form text input boxes, which then should return a validation string which says may not be empty, in which case then we're hitting the body tag and we're checking to see that it contains the may not be empty validation string. Okay, so once again, simple test, but it worked and it's tied into our pipeline now, and we can actually take a look at that Jenkins file. So here's the functional test dev stage. We have it sleep, and then we just execute the Maven test command, and we're specifying a particular test class. So that's pretty much it. Thanks, and I'll be talking to you guys again shortly.